We all fall short of grace and mercy at some point in times in our lives to a point where we are left to make a choice. We are held to a higher standard than most, but we also need redemption and a way to express ourselves. And this is a pastor's voice.
Okay, here we go. Live on the couch with Pastor Strick. How are you today?
I'm great, brother. Glad to be here.
Really? That's good. Well, listen. So, just for starters, I know there are a lot of headlines and controversy, around this story because people want to know one side, this side, and that side, and so there is a side that comes from you. So we want to know. Well, tell me and the viewers, what made you decide that it's time to quote unquote set the record straight on your behalf.
Well, I always wanted to. Um, I'm a real transparent, head on type person. So it was against my nature to be quiet during all of the various noise and controversy. But the Lord had really led me to endure that for the sake of the families and all of the people that were involved that were already going through injuries. Me creating more for them to deal with online and so forth and so on, I felt like would have been a selfish choice. And I do want to make the acknowledgement that even now, like I could care less what people think. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not motivated by those kind of things. People are gonna think what they want to think and they're going to feel what they want to feel. But there is something that is uniquely different about where I am now. I always felt concerning Anaya Mack that she deserved for me and for somebody to set the record straight on her behalf with her having lost her life, that she was not my mistress or not some person that was intimately involved with me, and lost her life because of that. That narrative I find offensive. It's a lie. It's just not true. And um and so I feel like every time that I hear something like that, it's like it's a slap in my face and in her family's face and in everybody's face that cherishes her memory and that cares about her, because it's the opposite of the kind of young lady that she was. And so, as I said, I don't care what people think about me, but I do care what people think about her and other people that I care about.
This question mainly involves something that is more a little personal, whatever. But what was your connection, or what was your involvement with Anaya?
Anaya was a member of mine, but she was also somebody who I loved and had a very, very close relationship with. We were not romantically involved as has been publicized. I've never even seen, like, even in the documentary and all of the stuff that they did, they made it like I was picking her up and different things like that. I've never even been to her apartment. I've never seen this young lady like literally outside of church. Um, I will, in being super transparent, I will admit to the fact that we shared some humorous text messages, that they removed like various emojis and stuff like that and tried to put different words in there. Like one of the text messages that they like direct quoted, it was not what it was. It was like I didn't say that. I never sent that message. And so anyway, my involvement with Anaya was on a church level. She was one of my parishioners. On a personal level, we were really close friends. But there was no, I mean, like the things that were said, bro, was just like crazy. I mean, that she would try to like blackmail me or any of those type things. I never had a negative interaction with Anaya at all. In our entire life, like she was extremely respectful to me, both as her pastor and as her friend.
After you come into the knowledge of the death of this young female, did you for once think that something would lead back to you in some sort of way?
Yeah. All right. So first and foremost, this young female is Anaya Matt. That's her name. And no, like I had no idea. I had no idea that I was, gonna be implicated in this in any way. I yeah, like I was getting the news when everybody else was getting it. It was even like even prior to now, there were like publications made where it's like supposedly I knew Donnie, her boyfriend, who was her confessed killer. I didn't know this guy. I mean, I might have seen him one time in my life, and never had he visited the church I pastored, but like it was publications put out there basically said that they like met at the church or like I had a relationship with him as well. I didn't even know this person. I had no knowledge. I couldn't have picked him out in a lineup, prior to the death of Anaya.
So there have been multiple publications of this story. Um,
Absolutely.
uh, are you aware of the things that have been said about you online?
I mean, like I said, I'm a really busy person, and I thank God that I've been able to be productive. And like, this is probably the only thing that people say online that bothers me. And it does not bother me for me as much as it bothers me for Anaya. She's not here to defend herself. And I think here's a young lady who suffered as a victim of domestic violence. And let me be totally transparent. Like Donnie's family, the family of Anaya's killer, like I was empathetic toward them as well because like, they didn't lose a son in the same way that Anaya's family did, but they lost a son. And like I thought that there was a bigger issue that kind of went not talked about. Domestic violence is a real issue. And young couples, as well as a lot of old couples as well, need to be taught how to navigate emotions and, mental health and all them other kind of things. And even some of the red flags that were talked about by friends of hers after the fact. Like I didn't know anything about any of that. But,
So how did okay, out of the whole situation that started, how did you actually become, basically just saying, how did you become a suspect? Period. Even though you were, a pastor, you was friends and whatnot. What initially made you okay, like a
I was never a suspect ever.
So how did you wind up in it?
That's my point. I mean, like this was a media circus.
Okay.
This was an intentional attempt. At that time, I was the president of the NAACP. I was the state chaplain for the Michigan NAACP. I was one of those people who were constantly online coming against injustice, all those other kind of things. I had other political aspirations that I mistakenly had let get out of the bag. And this was an attempt to utilize this to usurp those aspirations. So
basically, what you're saying is you think that this may have been a political a way to tarnish a mild successful journey that you were trying to walk.
oh well, yeah. I mean, like right now, if I kill you right now in this room and I confess to killing you, nobody will implicate your wife or your friend or your cousin because I mentioned them in my confession.
Okay.
It's like I'm not involved at all with the criminal aspects of this case. And everything that's been said about me was said by the person who killed this young lady.
So everything that was said about you basically came from the wordings of Anaya's killer.
Absolutely. And not only that, but I'll take it a step farther. Like they even in the first publication they did, they made it like I went into the police station. I never went into the police station. I had one phone call with the police station about a car that Anaya was driving of mine. Other than that, I never had any conversation with the police about anything. So it was like, what, how did I get involved in this in any fashion? I tell you what, if I had been, another leader from another demographic, they probably would have suppressed the confession to avoid me being implicated. But it was beneficial for me to be implicated.
So we come to the conclusion that you were not directly involved. You were actually, basically just scooped into the pot whenever the her alleged killer just decided to to implicate you as a way, basically just like a scapegoat.
Well, I mean, I won't try to pretend like I know and understand every angle of her killer's thinking. But I can assure you that I was in no way involved. I mean, I was 1,200 miles from Kalamazoo, Michigan, in Louisiana, preaching. I was at my family reunion. I had been gone for 2 weeks. I was out of town for a full 2 weeks. And it's my understanding that when he first started talking to the family and the family started looking for her, he was telling them that she had a flat on that Sunday and that I was supposed to be coming over to fix the flat for her. Well, as soon as he started telling that to friends of her that were parishioners and members of the church, they knew immediately, okay, he's lying. Because everybody in the church knew that I was out of town and had been out of town for the last 2 weeks. So that's when his story really fell apart. And I truly believe that this was a premeditated situation. I don't know that they didn't have an argument and that, he didn't ultimately kill her in a fit of rage. I don't know that. But I definitely know that after that happened, that he had crafted this plan to in some way make me the killer.
Wow.
Yeah, and literally like the whole coming and picking her up from the apartment, none of those things are true. Like I don't, right now to this day, even after that has happened, I couldn't drive you to the apartment. I don't have any idea where she lived. I know that she lived somewhere close to Western Michigan University, but as far as me having any idea, I don't.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's move along then. So we've actually heard, your side of the story on Anaya. So let's take a turn here. Okay. So from what I gather from the publications online and whatnot, they have this little narrative built behind you for misleading the church and abusing your position and power. Can you speak on that?
Well, I think I'm pretty transparent. I am who I am. I'm not a person that most people feel like mediocre about. People either really love me or really hate me, typically. Some people may still be on the fence or whatever the case may be, but I'm pretty consistent in my behavior and in my personality. I'm not free of error or free of flaw, none of those kind of things. I said this during the time that I was going through my sentencing. Like, I've never professed to be innocent, okay? But neither are you. Neither is the person viewing this. Nobody's innocent. But I've just professed to not be guilty of what I stood accused of. And
well, so now, not to cut you off, but like what were you accused of?
Yeah, I like to talk about that. So like I had 10 like 20-year felonies, like human trafficking, CSC 2 or 3, like,
What is that CSC? What is that?
Criminal sexual conduct, okay. third degree or something of that nature, Okay. It was like 10 of them all together, right. All of them were 20-year felonies, and and all of those charges were dismissed. As a matter of fact, I didn't go through with a preliminary hearing, which a preliminary hearing is where they decide on if the prosecutor has enough in those charges to go to make you have to go to trial. So in a preliminary hearing, it's the lowest burden of proof. It just means that it's probable that, okay, you left your wallet in this room, you walked out of the room, it was 3 of us in here, any 3 of us could be bundled over on theft charges because it's probable that we got the wallet. It's possible anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically, a lot of the things that they had you accused of were just circumstances of probable cause.
Well, I'll say this. They wasn't even that because my wife was accused of the same felony charges and she overcame all of them at a probable cause hearing. Every one of them.
I tell you what, let's go back. Let's go back. So the day, so during the timing of you guys being accused of these things, of these allegations, why were you accused of these allegations? Was it because of someone else involved, or someone just wanting to just tarnish your name? Like what? Like the people really want to know, like what led all this on in the first place.
You know, there are some things that I probably won't be able to talk about. I want to be as transparent as I possibly can, but I made some really big enemies. You know, and in my work with social justice, I was a young, zealous, not only ambitious, but super aggressive black leader. And I couldn't be bought. That was the biggest strike. When the people who were in power in Kalamazoo, Michigan, came to me and offered me $300,000 to roll into my budget into the church and to do some various events or whatever. They just told me basically to write up anything and we're gonna, put this money in there. I told them that in my church, I couldn't afford to let one of my partners contribute $300,000 to my running budget because that matched my running budget. And I was going to hire people. And the next year from that, people were going to need those funds. So I wouldn't agree to those things. And I told them what we can do is we can do like $50,000, programming where we target something like maybe HIV prevention or, infant mortality rates or something like that. I wanted to work with them, of course, but I didn't want them owning my budget and employing my team and putting more money into the church than the church did itself. And what I found out later is that most of the pastors were repelled by this as well, because once I turned that down, I became one of the few pastors in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who were not receiving funding or were not receiving, some type of programming thrust from these funders.
Okay. So basically, it's almost like you were not willing to
sell my soul,
sell yourself just for the fame and glory and it being hid behind the church.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it was like Kalamazoo is an awesome city, man. It's got a lot of real good philanthropy. So, I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm just saying that for me, I was a highly public figure that I may say something negative about the police department. Next week, I may say something negative about Bronson Hospital turning away a man and the police letting him die outside the ER in the backseat of a patrol car. I may talk about that, and so I just recognized that I wasn't the right kind of leader to fit into, receiving funding and stuff like that from the same people that I may be talking about next week. If I had done that, it would have put a muzzle on my mouth. It would have put me in a place where I would have had to be quiet. And I wasn't comfortable with that. I believe that the only thing that God gave the preacher is his voice. And our voices should be unprohibited. It should not be for sale. And it should not be, utilized for the gain of, popularity or to steer the public. It should be utilized to authentically represent the views and what God has led us to stand on.
We've covered and got past Anaya the political aspect as to why you were targeted. So now after you've been targeted, after you are basically about to have to turn yourself in to go to jail. All right, how did that affect your home and your family life?
Well, before I answer that, let me just say this one thing about that. When I got ready to turn myself in, I need to restate my plea because I've said this 100 times. People still make it what they want. I mean, literally, the media reported 10 minutes after I did my plea that I had pled guilty to human trafficking of a minor, I believe, or something like that. My agreement was that I would not plead to anything that was related to me and any sexual activity, and that was related to me soliciting any minors. Okay, which neither one of those things happened. Neither one of those things occurred.
Right now, we want to know. Okay, what were your charges?
Okay, first of all, I had no charges that would have constituted that I was a pedophile or that I had been touching small children or any of that. Okay. The charges, all of the heinous charges, the 20-year charges were dropped, like human trafficking, CSC3 or whatever was on there. Any of the charges that people pull up online, I was not convicted of any of those. So the charge that I pled to was basically facilitating or offering to facilitate travel services for the purposes of prostitution. And it's my understanding that the reason why this charge is on the book is like, so if like an Uber driver picks up a prostitute and drops that prostitute off at a place where she's involved with a John, he's not directly involved with the prostitution. But what they'll do is they'll charge him with this so that they can get him to testify against the prostitute and or the John, right? Human trafficking just didn't fit the narrative no way because they were painting the picture that I was the buyer. Well, the problem with that is that a human trafficker is the seller. So you can't be the buyer and the seller. I mean, like it's just like drug trafficking. You can't be a crackhead and a kingpin. You gotta choose. You gotta be one or the other. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But the narrative that they paint is like, I mean, I don't know how they can even get away with those kind of things intelligently. It just makes sense. Like you can't be the person that's still in the car, and be the owner of the car. Like you just can't be both of them people. You need another person there in order to make that happen. So if I was trafficking, surely just like a drug trafficker, you need a transaction. You need a person that's benefit. You need me as the benefiter, and you need somebody else that's benefiting from the services.
So give me your outlook on the days leading up to you having to go to prison.
Man, the days leading up to me. First of all, let me make this quick acknowledgement. I'm glad you said that. I never went to prison.
Oh, you didn't?
No. I mean, everybody, listen, everything you see online will lead you to believe that I went to prison. That's what even the last documentary that's out there about Anaya, it says I went to prison for a year or something like that. I did 10 months in the county jail. 10 months in the county jail and a plea deal saved me $50,000 and all of the potentials that come with a trial. I'll take that deal today. If you put me in the same identical situation and you give me 10 months or like even with coming off the pandemic, I was living out of my savings account and having to take care of 10 children. Like in that situation, $50,000 and I'm not guilty is not a win for me. If it deplete all my resources, that's not a win. So leaving my family in a position where we still got that money in the bank and I'm still able to take care of my family, and all I got to do is be gone for 10 months. I know people right now, servicemen and, people that work in capacities where they spend that much time away from their families voluntarily. And that's what I did. I thought that it was the best decision and it was just an unpassable deal. So I had to move forward with that because it was the best deal available at the time.
For the viewers, what was your time like behind bars? And we also want to know, how do you feel about people in churches that feel like incarcerated pastors are not fit to lead a congregation?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like, man, I really, Man, my time around but behind bars or incarcerated was probably the most amazing experience that I've had as a pastor.
Really?
I mean, yeah, like the most fruitful environment that I've ever been put in as a preacher was jail. I mean, I seen young men come into a cell with me and four other guys and be on the floor crying about being there. And 2 months later, we've been praying and been in, church every Sunday right there in the cell together. Now we couldn't get out and go nowhere. I preached every Sunday. Every Sunday I got on the phone and preached to my congregation. 30 and 40 people would be on the line every single Sunday that I was incarcerated, and I preached the word every Sunday. And so, I had young men that cried about coming to jail, and then I had young men that cried about leaving, because, I just saw, man, it would take us we have to do a whole nother segment about that. Like literally, it was one of the most humbling experiences. I had guys that were in the cell with me that had been hooked on meth and that had been clean for the first time in their life during that stint that they were in the cell with me. And I set them up for like resources, and some guys that I was able to get housing and different things like that through the resources and the connections that I had. And just to hear their success stories and to be a part of that and to be a part of them leaving and going back to their families, like, man, it's like I wouldn't take nothing for that. I promised when I got ready to leave that I would never leave jail. And I am dedicated to making sure that my ministry always has an influence over some incarcerated, population of people.
How do you feel about those that have some sort of narrative to say about a pastor leading a congregation that has been incarcerated?
Well, I mean, everybody's entitled to feel how they want to feel. And, I can understand it. Let me just say this first and foremost. Like, I can understand it totally. I can understand people having reservations, hesitations, all that kind of stuff. I believe that a tree is known by the fruit that it bears. I do not believe that, the optics created by social media should limit a person, but I think that they definitely, deserve some regard. But ultimately, if we're not going to let pastors pastor that have been incarcerated, we just lost Dr. King. Okay. We just, if we're not, I mean, since it's Black History Month, if we go over to the other side of religion, we just lost Malcolm X. If we go to our Bibles and we're not going to read anything that's wrote by incarcerated individuals, we just lost the epistles of Paul. We just lost our Savior, Jesus Christ, because he died a capital punishment death. He was not only incarcerated, but...
Wait. All right, look, we want to narrow this down, because I feel like this is going left. So, like, we want to know directly, how do you feel about those that look at a pastor not being fit to lead?
I mean, it depends on who that person is. Like, how I feel about them, how I feel about their perspective on it is, I feel like a lot of times when we think about what a pastor's qualifications are, I feel like we want something unrealistic from the pastor that we don't present ourselves. Like, I would have to use the word to establish what qualifies a pastor. And I see words like what Jesus said, let the one without sin cast the first stone, things of that nature. Like, because a pastor has never been incarcerated, certainly doesn't mean that he's more or less pious or holy or any of those things than another.
So your congregation that was there in Kalamazoo, like, how did they feel or how did they react towards you after your incarceration? Or did you have any contact with them afterwards?
Well, I had already left the church prior to being incarcerated. The pandemic really kicked us out of the church, Okay. I pastored the church for another year and a half after the accusations surfaced. But after the pandemic came in and the church shut down, at that point, it was time to, relocate totally. We had no church, no means of income. no means of, keeping the church going. So that's what I did. As far as my parishioners there, like those are the 30 or 40 people who were on the land every Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. So
they still kept in contact with you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, those individuals were really good to me. I didn't want for anything during the time that I was incarcerated, along with the fact that my family didn't want for anything. And most of that was related to our church family being so supportive.
So did your kids understand, what was going on, or did you tell them in so many words, or like how did that go?
Like my younger kids didn't really know where I was, or didn't really understand my leaving. They knew that daddy was leaving. And it was something that as they became more and more, like all of my kids, I feel like at this point, know, with the exception of my toddlers. So we've had detailed conversations about that. Every now and then, one of them would get prematurely thrust into having to talk about that because classmates would talk about it, or some adult around them would talk about it. But I thank God that my children are really, really resilient. Like, they have a natural resilience about them. They function well. It was difficult for my family during my absence. I'm a real strong father. I'm real present in my home. And it was difficult for my wife. It was difficult for my kids. But, we survived that. And I believe that we're stronger and better because of it.
So the time leading into you being released from prison.
From jail.
Well, from jail. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. From jail.
No problem.
In your time being released from jail, so you said that it initially made you leave due to being able to have reliable resources to support your family. So other than that, making the transition from that location to your current location now, like how did those around you receive you after you relocated?
Like what I tried to do whenever I was incarcerated, or even when I came under the scrutiny of accusations, like I never chased nobody. I just basically, the Lord told me early on, he said, use what's in your hand. Don't get entangled with going in the bushes, trying to find people, or trying to I'm not interested in, a person can have a positive view or negative view on this. It won't matter to me at all. This is for me an opportunity to tell my perspective and to cleanse for me. Okay. But yeah, I mean, some people retreated and withdrew from me, and others became even closer. The people in my intimate circle and the people that knew me, I didn't have any of those people. I didn't lose any of those people, as a result of my incarceration, the allegations, or any of that, and I mean, like, even while I was under the weight of these accusations, I had members that let me take their children from Michigan down to Mississippi on our horse farm and, enjoy Christmas and spring break and all that stuff. They never had any reservations about me and my conduct. I had never been accused of any misconduct in my church throughout my whole pastorship. So at the end of the day, this was and even today, I want to make that acknowledgement. They say, or they make the acknowledgement several times, that these people were members of my church. I've never been accused by a member of my church. Every person that has ever formed any form of an accusation concerning Pastor Strickland that I am aware of is a person that was caught up in the criminal justice system in some way, and they reached out to them and coerced them into being involved. Most of these people were extremely unwilling when the rubber met the road to get on the stands and to come and to testify and all those other kind of things. But I'm sure there were a few that, had enough of an incentive on their own charges in order to do that.
So, moving forward, actually moving backwards, your time in the county jail, did you ever have any cases where any correctional officers or member or people that were employed there to come back and tell you what other things were being said about you in the media?
Oh no, I mean like at the facility I was at, you couldn't watch the news, but I was talking on the phone like all day long, so I knew what was in the media.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking on the phone all day, every day. You know, I spent about $2,000 in the first month and a half just on the phone. I didn't realize how expensive it was. I came in, and the day I came in, I think I put like $2,700 on my books, and within the first month and a half, I was out of money. So I was on the phone constantly, literally. So I knew what was going on in the media.
So the phone became your best friend to be in touch with the outside world.
Well, I still ran a business,
Okay.
you
What
know,
business?
from jail. I was still running my farm. I was still, doing things with my horses, and
So you were still running your business and you still uh, operating your horse farm, right?
yeah, I was running my business. I was at the boys' football practice. You know, my wife would have me on FaceTime. I was giving them pointers on football. I was doing everything that I normally would do, and thank God that COVID had kind of prepared us to handle a lot of things virtually anyway. So, it wasn't like super uncommon for us. My business, I travel a lot anyway. So, I knew how to handle a lot of things by phone that I normally would.
Okay. Okay, that sounds very interesting. So after you made the transition and you came back down south, I'm quite sure that there were, a few obstacles that you had to overcome after you got here. But after you got here, what was your biggest obstacle that you had to overcome after you got back?
Um, dealing with dealing with the losses, dealing with the losses that
What you mean losses?
well, the losses that I suffered during my time away. I lost people. I lost money. Um, I lost relationships. Um, and coping with that was easier when I was away than it was when I returned. I had this natural, like, not insecurity, but this natural um, caution when it came to dealing with people, because I didn't know if you were, one of them people who had done jumped on the bandwagon with other people, or you would authentically, still a friend. So I would never make the first move. I was always like apprehensive and like, okay, well, if they call me, I'll respond. If they send me a friend request, I'll respond. I'm like, I ain't adding no friends. I'm not seeking nobody. I'm not doing it. I'm not looking for opportunities. If I go to church and they invite me to the pulpit, if I ain't sitting with my family that Sunday, I'll come. But if they don't invite me, I ain't going up there. I'm not, I just made in my mind.
So basically saying that you were not pressing or not pressing, you were not pushing yourself onto anything that you didn't feel that it was welcoming.
At all. Like I made up in my mind. Like, and I'll tell you this, to be totally transparent. The Lord had given me a vision about Galilee while I was incarcerated, literally. And and I was somewhat reluctant concerning that, because my thoughts was that I wouldn't ever pastor again. My thoughts were that I was open with that. The Lord had really blessed me at a young age to accomplish the goals that I set out for in ministry early on. So like I was okay with moving into another profession, doing some other things. Um and yeah, so it wasn't like one of those things where I've never made this lucrative income as a pastor that I thought was something that I couldn't supplement in other ways. The Lord always had given me multiple gifts, talents. I was well educated. I had other things that I could do. So I was fully accepting to the fact that I won't pastor again. As a matter of fact, I did not want to pastor unless I was being pursued, as opposed to pursuing the opportunity. Like, and I'll tell you this, to be totally transparent. The Lord had given me a vision about Galilee while I was incarcerated, literally. And I was somewhat reluctant concerning that because my thoughts was that I wouldn't ever pastor again. My thoughts were that I was open with that. I have the Lord had really blessed me at a young age to accomplish the goals that I set out for in ministry early on. So like I was okay with moving into another profession, doing some other things. Um and yeah, so it wasn't like one of those things where I've never made this lucrative income as a pastor that I thought was something that I couldn't supplement in other ways. The Lord always had given me multiple gifts, talents. I was well educated. I had other things that I could do. So I was fully accepting to the fact that I won't pastor again. As a matter of fact, I did not want to pastor unless I was being pursued as opposed to pursuing the opportunity.
Let's talk about your landing here at Galilee. So like you said that you briefly mentioned that you had a vision of coming to Galilee while you were incarcerated. What actually made that come to a reality whenever you were released and relocated?
Well, let me tell you about the vision first, real quick. So I'm gonna tell you that's important to me. So one night I was laying in my bunk and I went to sleep, and in the middle of the night I had this dream. I was preaching at Galilee. That wasn't anything uncommon. I had done revivals for them for years before I was incarcerated or before I had relocated. So I didn't think much about it, but this was unique because in this dream I had on my robe. And I rarely preach in my robe at a visiting church. Like I almost always preach in my robe only at my own church. And so that kind of caught me off guard in my dream. So I woke up the next morning real early and I was waiting on the phones to come on. As soon as the phone come on, I call my wife and I have her the three-way. My former armor bearer, who a young man who was under my ministry before I ever went to Michigan, so forth and so on. And he's a member at Galilee. And I was asking about the church and how things were going. And he informed me that, in fact, they were searching for a pastor, that the pastor had left. And it was like, it kind of blew my mind. I didn't let off to him that I had the dream. I didn't talk to him about it. But that stayed on my mind. That was probably September of, the year prior to me getting out. And I got out that November. So when I got home, he was the only person that knew I was coming home. So after I left Kalamazoo and flew into Jackson, he picked me up at the airport and took me home. And at some point during the travel home, he mentioned to me that one of the deacons might be calling me about coming to preach for him. And I'm still like real, hesitant for that. And so I didn't really entertain the conversation, but I just said, okay, no worries. So 2 or 3 months later, I do get the call and I come preach, and they asked me to come back several times, and I did. And ultimately, I was elected, pastor of Galilee Missionary Baptist Church. And it's been one of the greatest experiences of my ministry career. Watching what God has done to this ministry under my leadership and developing the relationship that I have already with this church family has really been a tremendous experience.
Moving forward here, how have you really faced any trials or hardships at Galilee since you've been here?
Show me a pastor that ain't faced no trials in his church. Yeah. And I show you a pastor that the devil ain't worried about at all. They just ain't doing nothing. I mean, the more that you try to do good, the more that, you're going to have to contend with something. If you go as a pastor, it's always been my philosophy that if you go do nothing, then probably nobody will bother you and you'll be able to be a good, quiet little do boy for the rest of your life and go retire and play golf. But if you go there really trying to change things and really trying to, grow things and all those other kind of things, well, the enemy is set in his ways and he has patterns that you disrupt. So yeah, to answer your question, I have faced hardships, not directly at Galilee. Man, Galilee has a great church and really has embraced me as the pastor. I applaud Galilee. They fought for me. They've stood between me and harm's way, and they've just been great to the Strickland family. Now, there's some crazy people around here that have stalked me online, that continue to spread lies and misappropriate truths and things of that nature that just can't be helped. But I've been doing this a long time now. I've been in ministry more than 20 years, and so I don't want to call that a hardship, but it's definitely something that, you can get fatigued with. The thing that I worry about with people like that, they'll never stop me, but I worry about them fatiguing my team and the energy and depleting the positivity of the church. But man, Galilee has shown itself to be so resilient and strong that every time somebody throws something negative at us or they throw a lemon out there, man, we come back with this big batch of good, sweet lemonade and just keep moving forward.
Okay. So, like, how have you been received by the area?
I think I've been received really well by the area. A lot of the leaders in the area have been supportive and willing to engage and to make a relationship. One of my former parishioners, Pastor Donald Coates, who I actually pastored when he was a deacon at Providence Baptist Church, is my neighbor right up the street here in our sister ministry and sister church, St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church. And we have a wonderful relationship, great working relationship, great camaraderie. And so, yeah, I think I've been well received by the people who matter. Again, you're always going to have a few of those people who, are against you, so to speak. But I don't think that those people are a reflection of the popular opinion on the area.
So what makes you actually feel as if like Galilee is basically a place for you to call home?
I don't know that I call Galilee home. I don't know that that's how I feel.
But
I know
not necessarily home, but this has been a place where you made a greater start.
Well, yeah, I know that I'm supposed to be where I'm at. Let me say that. It's no doubt in my mind that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this stage of my life. And I'm excited about that. And I'm going to run hard and I'm going to do as much as I can with the time that I have. As pastors, we cannot get tied up into a congregation or a facility. We have to be tied up into our assignment. And I recognize this is my assignment. And probably there are relationships that I have formed here at Galilee that, like Second Baptist or Providence or Pin Oak, will be lifelong relationships with this church family.
What would be your concluding vision on Galilee?
Man, listen, I'm telling you right now, like Galilee, we sit right off Highway 49, 5461 US Highway 49, Mount Olive, Mississippi. We are definitely one of the growingest churches in our area. And we seek to be one of the growingest churches in the state and or the country. God has been really gracious and kind to us thus far. I look for him to do big things. We're community focused ministry. We're really working to not just have missionary on our sign. A lot of churches got missionary on their sign, but their practices are stationary. And we're really working to be to have a relevant voice and to have a relevant presence in our community. So I want to embellish that. The first year here was really about getting the internal church back together and getting us back working on one accord, and just getting everybody where they needed to be. And right now I'm really excited because we've got a great team. We've got people who care about people, and I truly believe that we're walking in the purpose and the mission of being the church where God is love, everybody is somebody, and the perfect place for imperfect people.
Okay. With all of this rumble in social media and online about your situation, I know that you want to fire back at a lot of the things that have been said. So I know it may be hard to professionally fire back, but I know you have something that you want to say.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm the same guy at the board meeting that I am at the ball game. Like, I don't pull no punches. I didn't start out in church. I started out in another place where I live by a whole nother set of principles and a whole nother creed. And so, but like what people do on social media, for me, that's not relevant because I'm not one of those people who I don't hold a lot. Like people thought that maybe for me to lose popularity was gonna hurt me in some way or another, but I never asked for popularity. I was pastoring little small churches in Mississippi. I was preaching in little small revivals where nobody saw me. I never set out to do ministry for popularity. Popularity came as a result and a byproduct of me doing ministry at a certain level. So, I'm not tied to that. And I try not to be steered by that. I think it's real unfortunate that most of our young people and young leaders are. But what I do think is really significant and important is that we prepare the next generation, specifically of pastors, but other professionals as well. Man, it's going to come to a point where all the toxicity that's released online, nobody will do anything worth doing without going through some type of scandal or some type of spectacle. Like we are at that place now where if somebody hates you or if somebody don't like what you're doing, they don't have to contend with what you're doing. All they got to do is create this diversion tactic. Like all they got to do, they can abort literally. We can have a favorite basketball player, a favorite football player right now, and the right headline, we can, he can be out in Manhattan somewhere and some woman say that he raped him. And he don't even have to know the lady. They don't have to have no pictures. They don't have to have no videos, nothing. He's going to lose his endorsements immediately. I mean, it's immediate, especially if he look like us. If he got this much melatonin in his skin, or whatever it is that makes us this color, he's going to lose a certain amount of everything immediately. And he can be white. And it's still the same thing. He's going to lose a lot, You're not going to get the benefit of the doubt in our society anymore, and I don't care how much work you done. Like with me, man, I had 50, 60 kids throughout my ministry, maybe 100 kids throughout my ministry that have spent the night. I got 10 kids of my own. So every time I go to church, I leave with some kids that ain't mine. Kids always at my house, I got the fun house. They always kids outside playing basketball, whatever. So it's like we have to prepare the next generation because I was ill prepared. I didn't know that you could do right and still face this level of controversy, and literally that they didn't have to prove it. Like that our society is set up to where if it's said, it's going to get a certain amount of value anyway.
Right.
Because I challenge you to find somebody who will be able to say that on a first-hand basis, I have exhibited any type of behaviors that would be considered a pedophile. But the illusion is out there. The words are out there. So, and those are things that you can't necessarily get back. So you got to learn how to downlive it. And if we don't start preparing professionals to combat scandal, then we're going to lose a lot of really good people that could have did a lot of really good things because of it.
Okay. Well, you know what? To everyone that actually has something negative to say about you, what would be your message to them?
I don't know if I can say that on camera, but it's 2 words.
What would that be?
I again, I don't know if I can say that on camera, but I don't know if I care to say that. But like, I really, really, really I really could care less. Like, honestly, I'm not the person that gets sucked into the social media vacuum. If I was, I'd be somewhere hiding. Or I'd be somewhere like, I wouldn't be still doing that in the public eye. I'll go somewhere and sit down and enjoy my life and my freedom and go on. But that does not steer me. And I truly believe that as leaders, those of us, the Bible teaches us to preach in and out of season. Well, I've had the misfortune of having to lead in and out of season, but I'm still no less the leader. And I still strive to facilitate my obligations to God, to my family, to my church, to my community. And the ones who don't want to walk with me, then no problem.
Well, you know what? I think we've covered enough ground to scratch the surfaces on some things, and we just want to I want to say thank you for taking out the time to let us hear your side of the story, because like there are so many narratives out there, like, to where we just want to get your side with the other side and compare the two. And
Yeah.
so I just want to say I appreciate it, and I'm quite sure someone else out there wants to hear this as well, because nowadays there's this side, that side, and then there's the truth in the middle.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that you've actually given us more than your fair share of letting us know what is in the middle for us to scratch about.
Let me say this one thing as we close. Like, one of the reasons why this is important to me is because maybe after I'm gone from ministry or maybe from life, like, maybe I can encourage some young man that is going through scandal, that is some professional that, is on the verge of taking his own life because of the things that are being said on social media or because of the things that they're losing. I'm not oblivious to the fact that not every person has been endowed with my level of strength. Not every person could have faced the things that I went through. I went to jail on January 30th, okay, in 2023. January 30th, my son, who was his 18th birthday, he was killed 4 months before I went to jail. He was killed in a car accident, and my son's birthday is January 31st. So the day before my son's 18th birthday was also the first day that I spent a night in jail in my adult life. So at the end of the day, like I said, a lot of people couldn't handle all of the various things that I had, going on in my life. And so I want to use my life. Like, people think I care about them posting my mugshot. I don't care about that.
Yeah,
Like, that don't bother. Yeah, like I don't know why people think that they're like, well, I don't care. Make sure you post it on this so they know, that I don't care about that. I don't care about that because I'm not my mugshot. My mugshot don't define me. I'm not defined by one instance in my life. I'm not defined by one indiscretion in my life, one mistake, one failure. And I've had a lot more failures than what that mugshot represents. I've had a lot more indiscretions. I've made a lot of bad decisions that mugshot don't represent. But I've also made a lot of very good decisions. I've also done a lot of positive. So I don't allow those things to define me. And so my message, in closing, I'm the Baptist preacher, so we close 3 or 4 times before we close. But my message in closing is to that person that may reach this, that's at a place where, they have allowed people and their perspective on them to influence them to not be great, to not do more, to not give everything they have to give and to not truly experience the fullness of their life. Like, don't let nobody minimize you to your mistake. Don't let nobody minimize you to your shortcoming. Don't let nobody minimize you to the latest rumor or the latest lie. Like, I just encourage you to seek your destiny relentlessly, and to not let any obstacles block you from what God has for you. Because above everything in the world that scares me, it scares me the most to live apart from my destiny in God and apart from what I was designed to do. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm even grateful for what I face, because I've had so many people that have reached out to me that are facing things that they are ashamed of, or facing things that they're not proud of, and have reached out to me for encouragement. That's another reason why I didn't go into detail about a lot of the things, because sometimes I found that people feel more comfortable talking to me about things based on things that they've heard. And I'm okay with that. Any way that I need to be utilized to make sure that before I go in the ground, that I have done what God designed me to do. Whatever comes with it, I take it.
Okay, that's all right. So there we have it. The actual first stage of sitting on the couch with none other than Pastor Strickland. I really think that this has been a good side of the story. So, like, I know there's a part two to this. I feel there's a part two to this. So listen, so look, yeah. So y'all stay tuned, and Pastor, you stay tuned, and we'll be back to get more of this as time progresses. And we thank you for giving us the opportunity of letting us get it first.
Well, I certainly appreciate you reaching out to me, and again, I just felt like it was time, and I'm glad to know that there are people who are concerned about the other side. One of the things I do want to acknowledge is I was really disappointed that with all of the various black media outlets and I don't know what y'all call these YouTube users. I don't know if they have an official name or whatever, but like, I was really disappointed. All these people that basically just copied and pasted what the media had in, never made any effort to like reach out to me. Like, I would even go in their comments and put my email in their comments. I never heard from them. And I'm talking about 10 or 12 different people. Most of them were people that looked like me. And it was like nobody, it's like everybody just took what the media said and ran with it. And we know historically that the media has represented us in the most negative light and disproportionately has, promoted the most negative viewpoints of black leaders across the globe. And so I want to encourage some of the people that do what you do, man, to if you're going to do a story, especially on, your own people, I want to encourage you to like do some research and to actually like look into the story and like,
or just cut all of the narrative out and go direct to the horse's mouth.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Don't research something that somebody else done put out there for me to research. Just go direct to the horse's mouth.
There you go. Especially when you got a horse that's over here bucking and neighing and ready to talk, right. Because even though I was on assignment and I recognized that I needed to be quiet. I needed to take this on the chin. This was a sacrificial offering for me. God wanted me to see, can you be faithful enough to me to hear my voice well enough to not fire back? And I think I did a good job with that. I'm glad I'm beyond that. And I'm in fire mode now.
All right. There you have it.